Annie, that was excellent. I love that you focused your Devar Torah on chesed. There could be no more perfect message for this time that we are living in. You talk about how Eliezer, Abraham's servant, creates a test to find the right match for his master's son Isaac. And that the test wasn't just for someone who would share their water with a thirsty stranger, which is already kind, but who would, as you say, go above and beyond. Specifically, who would offer to provide water to the camels as well. I don't think we really understand how above and beyond this was. Eliezer had 10 camels. Probably few Brooklyn residents understand that a single thirsty camel needs 53 gallons of water to rehydrate and can drink that amount in 3 minutes. So we're looking at 530 gallons of water drawn from a well. That is an exceptionally kind offer for someone you've just met. In the Torah, more attention is given, generally, to the patriarchs than the matriarchs. We know a lot more about Abraham than we do about Sarah, Isaac more than Rebekah, Jacob more than either Rachel or Leah. Often the women are left out entirely, and we talk about our ancestors only as men, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But there's an alternative perspective that you can find in the tradition, which is that we ought not think of the primary characters as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but as Abraham, Rebekah, and Jacob. In fact, some commentators think of Rebekah as Abraham's true successor. And they have some good evidence to go by. As we know, we meet Abraham 2 Torah portions ago, when he's called by God to leave the home of his family and go to a land he does not know. Now, a generation later, Rebekah's living in the land where Abraham grew up and is similarly called to go on a journey to a new land that she does not know. Like Abraham, she bravely leaves her family and consents to go, saying in her own voice, Elech, I will go, which has a resonance with God's call to Abraham, Lech Lecha. It's almost a call and response spanning 3 Torah portions. God says, Lech Lecha, go forth. Rebekah says, Elech, I will go. Also, like Abraham, Rebekah receives a blessing that she'll have many offspring. Abraham is told that his descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Rebekah's family blesses her, O sister, may you grow into thousands of myriads. But the most important similarity between Abraham and Rebekah is in relationship to chesed. One of the most famous and paradigmatic moments of Abraham's life is when he is approached by 3 strangers in last week's Parsha. He rushes to care for them, offering them food and water and shade and a place to wash their feet. And for this, he becomes known as our model, our people's model of chesed. And when the rabbis speak of the patriarchs, they understand Abraham to represent the quality of chesed, the quality of loving kindness. His true heir in this regard is not Isaac or Jacob, but Rebekah. As seen in this parsha, she is characterized by an extraordinary chesed. Like Abraham, she's put to the test with a weary and thirsty stranger. And like Abraham, she goes out of her way to be generous and thoughtful, compassionate and caring. And like Abraham, and like our tradition makes clear over and over again, Rebekah demonstrates that chesed is an expression not of weakness, but of strength, as Rabbi Colin taught us last night. If you doubt it, you try lifting 530 gallons of water out of a well. Like Abraham, Rebekah is the only one of the matriarchs who hears directly from God. Like Abraham, she does what needs to be done to ensure the lineage of God's covenant, circumventing Isaac to get the covenant blessing to Jacob. Through Abraham and Rebekah, we see that chesed is the signature quality of the founders of the Jewish people. It is meant to be our core characteristic. The reason this matters so much right now is that we're living in a time when just about 50% of the American electorate, 77 million people, have chosen a government and really a movement that actively celebrates cruelty. We know that many of our fellow Americans made that choice not because they sought to be cruel. Many made that choice despite the cruelty and hatred that was on display. But that vote was a choice to tolerate cruelty at the very least. And it was a choice, even ever since 2016, that has been unleashing a climate of cruelty upon our nation. The New York Times reported yesterday that there were a number of hate incidents this week by white supremacists. 750 of such incidents have taken place since 2020, with more than half of them in the last 18 months. These groups spread messages of hate against Jews, Black people, immigrants, and LGBT people. We know that human beings are social creatures, and we copy what we see. Our environment and the kinds of activities that are in our news feed affect us. So there's a real danger that we all might become more tolerant of cruelty, dehumanization, hatred, that these become normal to us, that we ourselves become numb or hardened as bystanders, as witnesses to cruelty, that in an attempt to protect our hearts, we close them. There's also the danger that we become wary of chesed, when it seems that the world is hardening around us, when softness is mocked. It's easy to think that kindness is naive, that love is foolish, that open-heartedness is weak. Instead, we have the ability right now to be clear-eyed about who we are and what we stand for and what we have the power to do together. The first and most obvious thing that we have the power to do is to simply live out our values. As demonstrated by Abraham and Rebekah, we are a people founded in chesed, a people established in loving kindness and for the purpose of loving kindness. For our ancestors, this wasn't just an emotion. It wasn't an internal state only. It was action. This is what I'd like to suggest is the single best way for each of us to go through the years ahead, starting today. We don't have to wait. In fact, we shouldn't wait. It's important we not wait. Instead, what if right now we became people characterized by kindness? Not through sentiment, but through action. What if we challenged ourselves to do a single act of kindness each day? Like you were saying, Annie. For someone in our family, or someone in our neighborhood, or someone at work or school, or someone we don't know. It could be putting a little note in a child's lunchbox, or getting a cup of coffee for the person behind you in line. It could be picking up a couple of extra things at the store for a neighbor, or taking a moment to smile and make eye contact with someone on the street who seems to be having a hard day. That's the daily challenge. What if we made that our challenge? What if we made that how we live? Next is the weekly challenge. What if we scheduled something in our week, put it in our calendar, a regular thing when we do a bigger act of kindness? Maybe you make sandwiches for the refugees who are living in our neighborhood through a program like the one that our refugee task force does. Or you could be signing up for the CBE Chesed team and making soup for people who are sick. Anything like that. That would be the weekly challenge. Identify it, put it in the calendar, and once you set it up, you will be so glad you did. And then once you've got those two things going, then there's the yearly kindness challenge. I'm calling it that. Identify a big ongoing act of kindness that you can be part of to care for someone who is vulnerable. And maybe that's joining one of the circles that have formed here to house and adopt a migrant family. Or maybe it's continuing to raise funds and support the organization of your mitzvah project, Annie, in a significant ongoing way. It doesn't matter what it is. But find something that becomes your ongoing, yearly, big lift of chesed. If we do these things, we will have changed the pattern of our lives to infuse them with kindness. Now, a note about missing the mark. Everything has the potential of doing more harm than good if we miss the mark, even kindness. So if we're kind in a way that makes us feel that we're better than the person we're helping, if it involves pity or judgment, that can do more harm than good. Or if we're kind in a way that's smug and shows off how good we are, what a good person I am, that can do more harm than good. Our kindness should come from deep humility. We should recognize that we're doing these acts for our own sake as much as anyone else's, that this is medicine for our own souls, that we need to be kind as much as anyone else needs to receive our kindness. It should come from a tender place of seeing another human being as a fellow traveler and offering something that might bring them a smile or a little less pain. It can even be anonymous sometimes. If there's time or the conditions are right, it can be based in listening and finding out what that person needs or what they want. These daily, weekly, and yearly projects of chesed are entirely doable no matter what your age. And they will make us feel so much better. We are not powerless. We are immensely powerful. We have the power to define who we are. No one else gets to do that for us. 8 years ago here in this congregation, we organized a resistance to that election, to those results, that involved a flurry of public activity. This time, though public action will probably be necessary and important, this time seems to me that the most important resistance is within. It's the resistance of the soul. It's the resistance of character. There was a question during this election about how much character matters. Character is everything. Imagine what our community, our neighborhood, our city, our country would look like if this is how everyone responded to the cruelty of this time. Caring for each other with acts of kindness every day, helping vulnerable people know that they're not alone, weaving a web of mutual aid and mutual concern, which is what we want our society to look like anyway, which is what we want to be like anyway. Our tradition understands that we are what we do, not just what we think or what we feel, but what we do. That's why the emphasis is on mitzvot, hundreds of small actions that become the pattern of who we are. We don't want to be cruel people. We don't want to be defined by public displays of cruelty or by cruel policies over which we have no control. We don't want to be silent or passive when cruelty occurs. We want to be like Abraham, and we want to be like Rebecca, defined by chesed. Now is the time to make that real. Once our own lives are defined by kindness, not just as sentiment, but as a pattern of our living, no one can take that away from us. Not ever. No matter what. Shabbat Shalom.